now, game 1 of Fat Penguin versus 3D Clan.
We're gonna have cold colors for not Fat Penguin, but Fat Penguin rather, with the Malians and the HRE. A civilization combination we've seen so much last weekend, and usually it was a sling type of strategy. But the players and the teams had 1 week to figure out how to possibly deal with it. Players and teams also had 1 week to figure out how to refine this strategy of combining the HRE and the Malians. So, well, you would think you know what's coming. Do you actually know it?
That's the thing. You always got to be like, okay, is this definitely just going to be the he's passing beef across and making a fat burger, or could it be someone else? Because we've seen fat stacks of troops made with the HRE Malian combo. I believe it was Villager OP that were able to dominate Course team when they had an HRE Malian mirror, but the difference is that the Villager OP team decided to all-in aggression, right? They were pushing a lot of early range type units. I believe they also had their Malian player kind of folded in as well. With, I believe it was archers and javelins, possibly. Like, there's been some interesting deviations at the point. Like, Malians are definitely no pushover, and I think a lot of players are starting to wake up to how dominant this Civ potentially can be. Especially if you're up against, you know, Civs that rely on heavily armored units, then you start thinking about something like the Musafadi Warriors that actually are just low-key insane damage dealers.
That's good, indeed. And if you look at the other team, there is 3DB on that side. And one of the players who kind of refined this 2v2 Malian meta was himself. He usually played archers with the Malians, but he was one of those players who showed that even if you do some level of slinging, if you can support the HRE player with some army, that could easily decide whether this strategy is successful or not.
Yeah, I think it's about balancing. Like, this isn't me saying don't ever sling at all, but it's like, how much are you slinging? Is it a kind of overkill? And oh, hello. Dark. Packing up and rolling out. He's moving right across to the... Okay,
Whoa!
so this... I mean, this is not like the same as the slinger we're talking about the Malians could do, but the whole logic now is to kind of condense both your bases together. And this is pretty crafty because usually the Chinese player just wants to eco boom up. He wants to be full greed, right? And he can do that because his defenses are so strong. Well, if you bring your Mongol player rather next to you, both of you can potentially boom up. You can be as greedy as you want.
I love this. You also have to consider something else here, and that is the fact that if the Malian player is indeed full slinging the HRE into a Burgrave Palace style flood, that's an all-in style strategy, and you will have a much better chance to hold that off if both of your bases are together. You have 2 town centers firing, the Mongol player is going to have the Barbican helping potentially to defend. All those cool things could be chained together to make it much more difficult for that all-in to work. Not even mentioning small details like, for example, slinging the Chinese player with sheep from the pastures.
That's exactly what I was thinking had to be the #1 thought in their mind, because one thing you have to remember is if you do see this HRE Burger Palace rush where the cheeseburger just comes through, one of the upsides of being in a team game is like, oh, my teammate's shut down, but I'm not. I can still do things. With this format, your defense is sure as hell better be strong enough, because if one player gets shut down, both are shut down, right? Like, that's my worry with this strategy they're implementing, is that if 30 men-at-arms come in, yes, the Chinese defenses are better at dealing with them, the hand cannon slits, but the flip side is going to be that not only are you going to be idle, but your Mongol teammate is also going to be idle.
Indeed. And looks like B was rather successful collecting sheep as well, so he's not going to need that much of a sling. He's got like 10 trailing that one scout, and he's got quite a few back at home. So that sling isn't going to be that much of a priority right now for Dark. He decided not to go with any Dark Age aggression though, so one has to wonder what he has on his mind. He could also be thinking of a fast castle himself. Mongols can nail some nice timings, and if you think about that, the HRE player will likely open man-at-arms if they play Burgrave. So if you rush castle yourself, get some crossbows out, you can negate the effects of that early aggression.
Yeah, I'm actually wondering if this is also kind of like the double bait from the 3D clan, because, you know, B has a reputation with Chinese, a reputation that involves a lot of buildings outside your opponent's base, outposts, barbicans, what have you. And his teammate picked Mongols. So, like, my thought coming into this, looking at the Civ choices, is like, oh, B and Dark are going to try to rush, they're going to try to outpost up, they're going to try to block out these players. Mongols also going to get a lot of value out of burning down all the Malian infrastructure. It almost feels like they tried to kind of, like, double layer this bait. Like, okay, you think we're going all-out aggression, but instead we're going full-on greed.
Yeah, a lot of mind games going on in here between the two teams. So far, it's relatively straightforward opening from the Fat Penguins. LoueMT dropping the middle right next to his teammates. Town center. It's actually a very nice stack over there. Aachen Chapel right on top of the TC. Villagers also well positioned. And on the other side, nothing out of the ordinary either. But you definitely see that they are concerned about early aggression. There's some towers coming up already for B, so
yeah,
they're cautious.
But you have to get those towers prepped ahead of time, right? Like, if they're worried about the HRE's timing, then what you should see is in B's base is these outposts laid around and prep for hand cancel upgrades. Because if you wait too long, you have to build these up when you're being rushed, it's too late. It's not going to work. Like, even the Chinese build speed, you're going to sacrifice a lot of villagers. So sets up the outpost in this area. Wouldn't mind him setting up an outpost over to the north side of the Mongol base as well. That'll give you essentially 3 hand cannon slit slots on the same screen. And then you can still drop the Barbican afterwards on the left side to secure the westward line.
Yeah, indeed. They opened with the Imperial Academy, so for the time being, the Barbican is kept in reserve. And as you said, this could just be kept behind to wait to see where the aggression comes from, and that's where you want to probably position it. And look at that, double towers even. They are really cautious about that gold mine. They're living and dying with that. And look at that, market coming up. This is going to be a sling from Dark.
Yeah, this is a little bit dangerous to, like, funnel all your outposts in one location, but I think their thought process is with the timing, like, it might just not work out. And oh my god, it's not going to work out the way they intended because they got baited. It's a next level bait coming out from CSO. He decides to actually go in for the typical knight build, also pick up the relics in the mid-map, and here's the benefit. They saw that B and Dark didn't rush them early on. I think they also scouted that Dark was not in his base. So they kind of anticipated this, and I wonder if this was originally planned or merely a pivot.
Yeah, like a lot of things to talk about here. As you see in the middle of the screen, before we actually discuss that, this is super clever. Did you just see that Dark actually slunk his stone from the Mongol Ovu to B? They're actually getting a second TC for B using the stone of the Mongols. That's so clever.
I think this was something that was revealed by the Kimchi Jagayan choice, if I recall correctly. There was a lot of talk about this being done in a game of Sort of, and it was really impressive the results you get with it, because it's kind of a weird interaction. As you may know, like the Mongols, they can't actually sell their stone, right? Like it's impossible to do that. So there's an interesting trick here where you can actually just donate that stone to your teammate. Love to see them using it, but I also still think they're a step behind. I genuinely do not think they expected a Regnitz in this game. Especially when you just see the Civ choices. It just makes so much sense that you're anticipating Burgrave Rush, but great pivot coming out from Fat Penguin.
For sure it is, and this is what I was referring to at the beginning of the game. You think you know what's coming, but do you actually do? And the answer is yes. This Khan coming in clutch over here, spotting the villager in the market on the north, because not only was this a Regnitz build, this was a trade-focused build from the Chinese team. They're already setting up markets in the corners.
And it looks like B, man, this feels rough. When you discover that there's no rush coming, there's no heavy men-at-arms diving into your base, you feel really bad that you fortified these outposts instead of building a TC.
Yes.
Like this was the resources that would get you your second town center, which as the Chinese puts you up at 3 TC effective. Rough start for them.
Yeah, it's a rough start. Especially because it's not a Burgrave build, instead it's gonna be Knight, so mobility element is also gonna be on this side of the Chinese team over here, the Fat Penguins. They're gonna start roaming around the map with Knights, they're walling off the corners for some good trades, and right now if you take a look at 3D, they have a combined army of 3 against an increasing amount of Knights, and more importantly, they have completely forfeit map control, so that's gonna be Ragnitz Cathedral, stacked with relics, great map control over here for the Fat Penguins, and as you said, 3D kind of feels like they got baited very hard into this.
Yeah, it feels like the D in the clan stands for duh, because right now this is a confusing back and forth mess of who one-upped who solved the problem better, like who anticipated what the other was doing more correctly, and it just feels like both are pivoting in ways that were kind of unexpected here. But I have to say, for the moment, Fat Penguin looking a bit better for it. They're going to utilize the lack of aggression to set up walls to set up that trade. They're going to pick up pretty much all the relics across the mid-map, and these Knights in the meantime are going to dominate these early fights because the crossbow count is too small, and Dark is contributing nothing to this.
Yeah, that's the big problem, right? This wasn't a full sling from Dark. All he did was sling some wood, sling some stone, so that they could fortify those outposts. But right now, those outposts are meaningless. And Dark kind of forfeit anything that the Mongols can give early on by sending all his stone away to his teammate. Right now, no standing army for them. They're slowly building up lancers, but by the time they get to decent numbers, walls will be up for the Chinese teams. And you could see for a brief moment that those traders are delivering 150 gold per trip. A single trip pays for their price. So in about a few minutes' time, we're going to see the payoff for that trade. And by the time 3D has any standing army to threaten that with, that trade is already going to be booming.
And we have got to highlight that Louis is also lacking an army right now, but there's no denying the fact for the opening at least, CsOH is contributing a lot more here with his HRE. What I want to see is which player starts to join in the dance quicker, because right now this is a 1v1 with a support player. I want to see what happens when it turns into a 2v1, because there's no denying that eventually, like, that's the benefit, right? Slinging seems very powerful, yes, but if you're able to sneak a second player into the fights, you will dominate these fights. It's just a raw number game as the game goes on.
Beautiful reaction here from Louis, spotting the villager chop through. Even gets the villager trapped in there, trying desperately to escape. He might be able to chop his way out, but even if he does...
Think he wants to.
Yeah.
It's the wrong tree! I'll go deeper. They'll never look here, so they will be able to take out the Villy. Can't at least get away for the time being. Wait, was he able to open the wall up again? What? Okay, there's a little bit of panic coming out from Louis, so just gonna cover the wall just in case. But look at the count right now. They're neck and neck. You can see that B is starting to escalate ahead now of CsOH, not to mention the fact he still has crossbows to add in. But one thing I'm keeping an eye on is the fact that CsOH has built a lot of prelates. Once they're done picking up these relics, he's going to be able to cycle those knights in and offset any damage done.
Yeah, for sure. If you look at the knight numbers, they're relatively even. Look at the eco numbers, they're also even. But we shouldn't forget about the fact that the HRE player is sitting on 5 relics already. And look at that resource bank. That's difference maker. We are about to have Imperial Age here for CsOH.
We are, and then I'm expecting that to be kind of like, I'll cover you as you go next, Louis, whatever Louis wants to do. Probably thinking of moving up towards Castle Age soon, and then looking into the Furimba garrison, at which stage the Malian player should be adding an army, a respectable army, quicker than what Dark can. Because if you look, you can see so far this Mongol player, it's pretty underwhelming. He's building archers, and there's no real reason so far to build these archers.
Yeah, exactly. Right now, you need archers to support those knights, but as you said, just a couple of archers over here, not even a flood of archers that we usually see from Mongols, feels like a pretty underwhelming utilization of what the Mongols can deliver. And by the time they really kick in, it's going to be Imperial Age. You're going to have elite knights out there for CsOH. He's even going to be able to offset raids now with the Pass of Swabia. And as you said, once he's up to Imperial, he's going to cover for Louis to just go for a crazy trade boom. I feel like 3D is on a very serious timer over here, which might be no longer than, let's say, 5 minutes.
Imagine saying that in a game that features Chinese. You're like, yeah, the Chinese are on the timer here. That's not often the case. Usually the idea going later game feels better, but maybe not in this situation with Dark's contribution seeming harder and harder. And B, well, he will discover the walls are up. He can't make his way through just yet. Looks like Louis was trying to be a little bit aggressive with the secondary layer walls. He's going to get the tip off that there are troops incoming, and this should be where we see the rotation coming out. Remember, for the time being, it's still just CsOH providing the army. Nothing is being contributed by Louis. He's all in on the trade. So he needs to buy time with the repair crew, but the archers and the crossbows will make that impossible.
Yeah, that wall is going down. Knights are shifting focus, though, for Furimba garrison also on the way for Louis. Those knights will come in, though. A couple of those traders will be picked off. The question is how much you want to commit over here for 3D, and I think the answer is you gotta go all in here. You gotta do damage.
And that's why CsOH is going to have to commit as well. Moves in, nice body blocks, needs to come out from B. Needs to make sure he doesn't expose the crossbows too quickly. Knight count, outgrades are now going to come through, so this is where CsOH can potentially take the fight, but the numbers are no longer on his side. He jumped the gun and paid the price, and now the tide of cavalry are going to flood into the Malian base.
Those 6 crossbows in the back line, they are changing this game, offsetting the difference even between the elite and standard lancers. And you see, even though you don't have a lot of them, they are enough to swing this battle in the favor of Beast. Now, a couple of javelin throwers coming out here, but it's too slow from Louis, and this aggression from 3D, working a lot better than expected, possibly.
Yeah, it genuinely feels like CsOH jumped the gun. They didn't need to rush in that early. They just wanted to protect the trade. It's almost like the screams going from the Malian player, if you don't look after my trade, I won't be able to give you all the gold. And in that moment, the HRE player's greed sets in. He's like, I must protect trade. Pays the ultimate price. There's so many knights being taken down before the upgrade came through. Imagine if he just waited for this timing and the initial javelin throws. How much more healthy they look. But now, looking at the military count, B has doubled up his counterpart in the heavy cavalry department.
Yeah, it's a big thing out there, and you've also lost a lot of precious trade for the Malian player. This is way worse than, let's say, losing villagers over here for the HRE. So that eco damage is tremendous, and what 3D is getting out of this is time. A lot of time.
It's not just time. There's a blood tax constantly being paid. The amount of javelin throwers who just got sniped on the backside there, they're never able to actually regroup and target down these crossbows. Crossbows that are eviscerating the front line of a Fat Penguin. They're running out of troops to defend with. They need to get more out in the field. Even the little archers that Dark brought out are still contributing. I wouldn't be surprised if he is soon taking up behind this because he hasn't added more army yet. And sure, he's been providing economy, but as we know, the difference between Malians and the Mongols is once you set up those pastures, it's passive generation of resources. You don't have to pay to produce them for your teammate.
Yeah, and those crossbows still working magic though. Caught off guard from the back line. This could be the game changer. You pick off those crossbows, you might have a shot at this.
Yeah, but they're in a choke point. The numbers not able to spread out fully, so a little bit better of a fight for CSO, but just not enough troops still. Javelin throwers are somewhat making the difference, and remember the damage they have afterwards can contribute into the Lancer line as well, so looks like 3D Clan is going to get cleaned up and pushed back for the time being, but you have to ask, what was the price?
Yeah, the price was massive. I think 3D just got back into this game because behind this, let's not forget, we're talking about a Chinese player, and you talked about Chinese late game. It's a threat when you don't have a lot of Malian trade going. Luckily for Louis, ooh, he set this one up sneakily. And I don't think 3D knows about this.
No, they've been so tunnel vision into the base on top of the Farimba Garrison, because you have to be, right? Farimba Garrison, like, if you either shut down the trade instantly or you keep this count down, but you can see they failed to do so. Javelin thrower count is now up at 12. At this count, they're even decent at dealing with the Lancers. And, well, speaking of those Lancers, there's not enough to hold back the Knights anymore. Crossbow ball isn't really increasing, and check the contribution now. Dark is down to contributing a Khan. One arrow, and that is all that he brings to a fight.
Yeah, it's scary. Eco difference is now also in the favor of Louis' team, and we've seen how good those traders are. If these Lancers go down from B, he's gonna have nothing to threaten those traders with, and from that point on, it's gonna be a massive snowball. Imperial Age now on the way for B, but what is he getting out of Imperial right now?
A teammate who still can't contribute anything but resources. Like, this is just a repeat the same issue. There was a big concern about if slinging's kind of OP coming in this, and sure, you can argue slinging's occurred in each side, but notice the difference that I was talking about. One side has a teammate contributing now. One player is able to move beyond just an eco benefactor to provide military as well, and that military has made all the difference. I mean, you're just seeing the damage they put out on heavily armored units, the fact that crossbows no longer work. It feels like B now has to rebuild his archer count, rebuild his knight count, and then also find a way to add in Nesta Bees as well if he wants even a chance of taking these fights.
It's also the economy of the slinging player. On one side, Dark has a standard economy. Nothing special, it's a 1 TC Mongol build. On the other side, the Louis had traders running for quite a while. He still has. And the resource income differential between the two players slinging is massive. That's why we do have Louis in Castle Age already contributing with an army, as compared to Dark, who has absolutely no forces on the field right now.
Yeah, and speaking of tech ups, right, B just made that tech up, paid 3,600 resources to do so. And that's a problem, because look at the count. Look at the opportunity. CSO understands now. Almost up to 40 knights here. He realizes the sacrifice that B made. So now, blood must be sacrificed to the Blood God. Movement in, on top of the eco, where all of the sheep are located here. If he idles this out, it will prevent B from rebuilding the army. But right now, the issue is pathfinding. Not easy to get around with all these choke points.
Yeah, it's not easy. Finally, those towers and fortifications come in there. Little too late to the party, but at least they do contribute a tiny bit now. But now you see Lancers circling around the base of 3D. They're down by essentially 40 army. Pretty significant deficit in the eco department as well. And now the efficiency is going to be horrible as well.
I would actually love to see Louis come up behind this and drop a few rams. Like, look at his javelin thrower count. The Knights can keep everything busy, and you slowly just ram your way through the base. I just need to be careful, though, because CSO, although they have a dominant position in this game, if they split off their Knights too much and they go into multiple groups like this, they're going to be picked apart. B will be able to eventually clean them up, and maybe you see a world in which 3D Clan survives. So we'd love to see a regroup and just a strong arm down the center.
Yeah, exactly. Now you have 32 javelin throwers, so you have everything you need. You have almost triple the army. You can just dive over here if you combine your armies, and that's exactly what they're thinking about. Nothing for 3D to stop this. And once again, tremendous idle time inside those bases.
And you know how some Chinese players are like, ah, ha, 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 you killed my villager? I built 5 more in that time. This isn't the same Chinese. This is no Barbican. This is 1 TC. This is pathetic. Like, any villager's lost is hard felt. And, well, it's about to get even more pitiful for them. Fort of the Huntress is coming up. Louis now making their way up into Imperial Age. Dark, in comparison, is now only going into Castle Age.
Oh, it's so sad right now. And don't forget, Louis already has a standing army. He's going to convert 30-plus javelin throwers into Imperial Age units in a second.
Yeah.
Even if Dark reaches Castle Age, he's got no standing army, so his immediate contribution will be next to nothing, and unless they have something immediate, this game is gonna be over, because they're outnumbered pretty badly on the playing field.
Man, come on. The Dark, he doubled his damage in his army. His Khan got upgraded for free, didn't even have to pay anything. Okay, yeah, that's really scraping the bottom of the barrel here. Oh, well, they might not have much left in that barrel at this rate. They might have drunk themselves dry. Louis continues to funnel more gold into an HRE economy that probably doesn't even need it due to the amount of relics he's got. Tech up is going to be complete. So now it is going to be double Imp versus Imp and Castle Age. And really, there's two players contributing versus one. Javelin throwers moving in, so the choke points no longer work to B's benefit. He's going to be idled out on the eco again. And as soon as that happens, he's going to fall drastically behind the other side.
Yeah, it's snowball building. And don't forget, behind this, we have a fully functional Malian trade. So B losing all his eco over here means that there's just no way back into this game. They will never catch up to the economy of the other side.
Okay, I was wondering when that was going to start attacking. That Neptunevs looked like it was a little bit drunk. It just kept looking left and right and going, what's my job here? So maybe that's one way they can slow down this push and reset, but still the same issue exists, right? Several villages being sacrificed, your army is shrinking. You know, what comes next after this? How do you even get back into this game? Especially now that Louis is adding in the Mustafadi Gunners.
Yeah, from this point on, it's gonna be all the way to PopCap for Louis even. I don't think he was PopCap just yet, but now he's going up. Mustafadi Gunners coming in. As you said, would be lovely to see a forward keep, though, just to solidify this position and make sure you don't accidentally throw this game away. Although, let's be honest, that would be a rather difficult thing to do.
I mean, I think the thing I wanted was Rams, right? At least Rams, just so that you can take out buildings, because there's nothing to threaten right now. Like, who's going to kill your Rams? These crossbows? the few Lancers that are still alive? It's just not happening. In fact, you can't even go into the heavy cavalry department anymore. If anything, you can see he's trying to go into hand cannoneers. He's probably going to have to think about spears as well, which just doesn't feel good. But realistically, what's your other answer to 50-plus heavy cavalry units coming from an HRE player?
I mean, you can always type GG and go next game, because that feels like the only reasonable option over there. Outnumbered 5-1, massively out-teched, and still Dark is nowhere close to contributing. B can do all he really can, but even if he reaches 200 population, it's gonna be insufficient because he's essentially playing 2v1 right now.
Yeah, I think B's been watching too many animes. I mean, he's got his little harem going, but at the same time, this is not one of those stories in the final second of the episode where the protagonist just slaps and taps everyone out. Instead, he's gonna be tapped out himself. Villages are just being eviscerated here. Neptunevs will fall, and with the signature unit of the B-Man himself gone, there is no way to hold this. This is complete death for the 3D clan.
It is, and it is gonna be the Fat Penguin taking the first game. A lot of mind games going into this one. 3D thinking that they anticipated the strategy of the opponent well, and it all comes down to how you shuffle around your game plan with two civilizations that you think are predictable, but in reality, they aren't.